Don't you dare touch me with those filthy hands! Victoria Blackwood's voice cut through the humid evening air like a blade, her emerald eyes flashing with disgust as she stared down at the young woman who had just bumped into her outside the exclusive charity gala. Emma Chen clutched her worn canvas bag tighter against her chest, her heart hammering as she looked up at the perfectly coiffed woman dripping in diamonds. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I was just trying to— Before we continue, please subscribe for my cause." "Trying to what? Steal something? Beg for scraps?" Victoria's red lips curled into a sneer. "Security should have never let someone like you near this building." What Emma didn't know was that across the marble steps of the Metropolitan Arts Center, a man in an impeccably tailored black suit was watching the entire exchange with growing interest. Alexander Rossi, heir to the most powerful crime family on the East Coast, had attended tonight's charity auction for one reason only: to scope out potential money laundering opportunities through the art sales. But now, as he watched this young woman with long dark hair and kind brown eyes being humiliated by Victoria Blackwood, daughter of a rival family's associate, something stirred in his chest that had nothing to do with business. Emma's cheeks burned with shame as other elegantly dressed guests began to stop and stare. She had only come here tonight because her friend Maria, who worked catering for the event, had begged her to deliver an emergency box of specialized gluten-free appetizers when the original supplier fell through. Now she wished she had never agreed to help. "Please, I'm not here to cause trouble," Emma whispered, backing away from Victoria's withering glare. "I'm just delivering something for the catering company." "Oh, so you're the help," Victoria laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Even worse. Do you have any idea who I am? My father could buy and sell whatever little company employs you before breakfast." Alexander found himself moving forward before he even realized it, his Italian leather shoes silent against the marble. He had killed men for far less disrespect than what he was witnessing, but something about this girl's quiet dignity in the face of humiliation made him want to protect rather than destroy. "Actually," his deep, commanding voice interrupted, causing both women to turn, "I believe the young lady is with me." Emma's breath caught in her throat as she looked up at the most devastatingly handsome man she had ever seen. He had to be at least 6'3", with dark hair slicked back perfectly and the kind of sharp jawline that belonged in movies. His gray eyes were the color of storm clouds, and when they met hers, she felt an electric shock run through her entire body. Victoria's demeanor changed instantly, her harsh expression melting into a sickeningly sweet smile. "Alexander, I didn't see you there. I was just having a little misunderstanding with this person." "Miss Blackwood," Alexander nodded curtly, not taking his eyes off Emma. "I trust there won't be any further misunderstandings." The threat in his voice was subtle but unmistakable, and Victoria's face paled slightly. Everyone in their social circle knew that Alexander Rossi was not a man to cross, though most believed his family's wealth came from legitimate business ventures. Only a select few knew the true source of the Rossi fortune. "Of course not," Victoria stammered, backing away. "I should go find my father. He'll want to discuss the new shipping contracts with you soon." As Victoria disappeared into the crowd of glittering guests, Emma found herself alone with this mysterious stranger who had just rescued her from the most humiliating moment of her life. "Thank you," she breathed, looking up into those mesmerizing gray eyes. "But you really didn't have to—" "What's your name?" Alexander interrupted, stepping closer. The scent of his expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely masculine made her head spin. Emma Chen." She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear nervously. "And you're Alexander?" "Alexander Rossi." He extended his hand, and when she placed her small, soft hand in his, he felt that same electric shock she had experienced moments before. "And you're not with the catering company, are you?" Emma's eyes widened. How had he known she was lying? My friend works for them. I was just delivering something. I should probably go find her and—" "Stay," Alexander said, the single word carrying such authority that Emma felt her feet root to the spot. "Have dinner with me." "I can't," Emma laughed nervously, gesturing to her simple black dress, the nicest thing she owned, but clearly out of place among the designer gowns surrounding them. Look at me. I don't belong here. Alexander's eyes traveled slowly from her face, down to her modest dress and back up, making her skin tingle everywhere his gaze touched. You're the most beautiful woman here tonight. Emma's heart fluttered. Was he serious? Men like this, powerful, wealthy, devastatingly handsome, didn't notice girls like her. She worked 2 jobs just to afford her tiny studio apartment and send money home to help her sick mother. She shopped at thrift stores and cut her own hair. She was nobody special. I should really go, she whispered, even as every fiber of her being wanted to stay in his magnetic presence. 1 dance, Alexander negotiated, extending his hand again. Just 1, and then I'll let you leave if that's what you want. Emma knew she should walk away. Everything about this situation screamed danger, but when she looked into those storm-gray eyes, her rational mind seemed to shut off completely. I don't know how to dance, she admitted, placing her hand in his. I'll teach you, Alexander murmured, leading her through the ornate doors into the main ballroom. The charity gala was in full swing, with hundreds of elegantly dressed guests mingling beneath crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than Emma made in a year. A string quartet played soft classical music while waiters in white gloves served champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Alexander guided Emma to a quiet corner of the dance floor, placing one hand on her waist and taking her other hand in his. At his touch, Emma felt like her entire body was on fire. Just follow my lead, he murmured, his breath warm against her ear as he began to move slowly to the music. Emma had been right. She really didn't know how to dance. But somehow, with Alexander's strong arms guiding her, she felt graceful. They moved together as if they had been partners for years, her body instinctively responding to his lead. You're a natural, Alexander said softly, spinning her gently before pulling her back against his chest. Emma's cheeks flushed pink. You're just a good teacher. As they swayed together, Emma became aware that they were attracting attention. Other guests were whispering behind their fans and champagne glasses, clearly wondering who this unknown girl was and why Alexander Rossi, one of the most eligible bachelors in the city, was dancing with her. People are staring, Emma whispered anxiously. Let them, Alexander replied, his arms tightening around her protectively. You have nothing to be ashamed of. But Emma did feel ashamed. Not of herself exactly, but of the lie she was living. This wasn't her world. In a few minutes she would have to return to her real life, her 2 jobs, her cramped apartment, her constant worry about money. This was just a beautiful dream that would end the moment she walked back through those doors. As if reading her thoughts, Alexander pulled back to look at her face. What are you thinking about? This isn't real, Emma said quietly. Tomorrow you'll wake up and remember that you danced with some poor girl who doesn't even own a proper dress for a place like this. Alexander's jaw tightened. Is that really what you think of me? Before Emma could answer, the music swelled to its climax, and Alexander spun her out and back into his arms with expert precision. But Emma, caught off guard by the complicated move, stumbled slightly. Alexander caught her, pulling her hard against his chest to steady her. And suddenly, their faces were inches apart. Emma could see flecks of silver in his gray eyes, could feel his heart beating against her chest, could smell the intoxicating scent of his skin. The entire ballroom seemed to fade away until there was nothing but the 2 of them, frozen in this perfect moment. Without thinking, without planning, Emma rose up on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss lasted only a few seconds before Emma realized what she had done, and pulled away in horror, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God, she gasped. I'm so sorry. I don't know why. I have to go. But as she turned to flee, Alexander caught her wrist gently, but firmly. Don't, he said, his voice rough with an emotion she couldn't identify. Don't apologize for that. Emma's eyes filled with tears of mortification. I just kissed a complete stranger. You must think I'm some kind of... I think you're extraordinary, Alexander interrupted, his thumb stroking over her racing pulse. And I think we need to talk somewhere private. Before Emma could protest, he was guiding her through the crowd toward a side exit. Emma caught a glimpse of her friend Maria across the room, frantically trying to manage the dessert service, and felt another pang of guilt. She should be helping, not disappearing with a man she had just met. But Alexander's hand on the small of her back made rational thought impossible. He led her out onto a secluded balcony overlooking the city lights. The cool night air helped clear Emma's head slightly, and the reality of what she had done came crashing down on her. "I can't believe I just kissed you," she said, covering her face with her hands. "You're going to think I do this all the time, but I swear I don't. I've never even been to a place like this before tonight." "Emma," Alexander said gently, pulling her hands away from her face. "Look at me." Reluctantly, she met his intense gaze. "That kiss," he continued, stepping closer, "was the most honest thing that's happened to me in years." Emma's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" Alexander was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the moonlight. How could he explain that his entire life was built on lies and violence, that he had never met a woman who wasn't either terrified of him or trying to use him for his money and connections? That her innocent, impulsive kiss had awakened something in him he thought was dead? "My world is complicated," he said finally. "Most people want something from me, but you kissed me because you wanted to, not because you were hoping to gain something from it." Emma felt her heart breaking a little. What kind of life do you live where a simple kiss feels dishonest? Alexander's laugh was bitter. "You don't want to know." But Emma surprised him by stepping closer, placing her small hand on his chest. "Try me." For a moment, Alexander was tempted to tell her everything, to explain that he wasn't just a wealthy businessman, but the heir to a criminal empire, that his hands had blood on them, that getting involved with him would put her in danger. Instead, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her properly. This kiss was nothing like the quick, impulsive brush of lips they had shared on the dance floor. This was deep and demanding and full of a passion that made Emma's knees weak. Alexander kissed her like he was drowning, and she was air, like he had been waiting his entire life for this moment. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I want to see you again," Alexander said, resting his forehead against hers. "I want that too," Emma whispered. "But, no buts," Alexander interrupted. "Give me your number." Emma hesitated. What was she doing? This man was clearly wealthy and powerful, probably used to dating supermodels and socialites. She was a nobody with a nursing school degree working as a waitress and a part-time bookkeeper to make ends meet. This would never work. But when she looked into his eyes, all her logical objections seemed to evaporate. "I don't have a fancy phone," she warned as she recited her number. "I don't care if you communicate by carrier pigeon," Alexander said, programming her information into his phone. "I'll call you tomorrow." "Alexander," Emma began, then stopped. She didn't know how to voice her fears without sounding pathetic. "What is it?" "When you wake up tomorrow in your expensive apartment and remember the girl in the cheap dress who kissed you at a charity gala, just remember that she's not playing games. She doesn't know the rules of whatever world you live in. If you're going to break her heart, please do it quickly." Alexander felt something crack inside his chest. When was the last time someone had been so vulnerable with him? So honest about their fears? "Emma," he said seriously, "I'm not going to break your heart, but I need you to promise me something." "What?" "When you learn more about me, about my family, about the business I'm in, don't run away before giving me a chance to explain." Emma frowned. "What kind of business?" But before Alexander could answer, the balcony doors burst open and Victoria Blackwood stumbled out, clearly having had too much champagne. "Alexander, darling, there you are," she slurred. Then her expression turned venomous when she saw Emma. "Oh, you're still here." "Victoria," Alexander said coldly, "you're drunk. You should go home." "Don't be ridiculous," Victoria laughed, swaying slightly. "The night is young, and Daddy wants to introduce you to some new investors from Chicago. Very interested in your import business." Alexander's entire body went rigid. Emma noticed the change immediately, the way his jaw clenched, how his gray eyes turned ice cold. "I'll be right there," he said quietly. Victoria smirked triumphantly at Emma before tottering back inside on her designer heels. I should go, Emma said quickly, sensing the shift in Alexander's mood. Emma, wait, but she was already hurrying toward the door. Thank you for tonight, for defending me, for the dance, for everything. This isn't over, Alexander called after her, but she was already gone, disappearing into the crowd inside the ballroom. Alexander stood alone on the balcony, his hands clenched into fists. For the first time in his life, he had met a woman who made him want to be better than he was. And now, he had to walk back into that ballroom and discuss money laundering operations with Victoria's father and his associates. The two worlds could not coexist. But as he thought about Emma's soft lips and honest brown eyes, Alexander realized he was going to try anyway. 3 days passed before Alexander called. 3 days during which Emma jumped every time her ancient cell phone rang, her heart racing with hope and disappointment in equal measure. When his name finally appeared on her caller ID, she almost didn't answer. The fairy tale was over. It was time to return to reality. Hello? She said softly. Emma? Just her name in that deep, commanding voice made her stomach flutter. I'm sorry I didn't call sooner. Business kept me occupied. It's fine, Emma lied, twisting the phone cord around her finger. I didn't expect... Have dinner with me tonight. It wasn't a request. Emma found herself smiling despite her nerves. I work until 9. Where? Emma hesitated. Rosario's. It's a little Italian place downtown. But Alexander, I can't afford anywhere fancy, and I won't let you pay for... I'll pick you up at 9:30, Alexander interrupted smoothly. Wear something comfortable. Before Emma could argue, he had hung up, at exactly 9:30, as Emma was hanging up her apron in the back room of Rosario's. Her manager knocked on the door. Emma, there's some guy here to see you. And honey, Maria's eyes were wide. He's driving a car that costs more than my house. Emma's heart started racing as she grabbed her purse and headed for the front door. Through the window, she could see a sleek black sports car parked outside, and Alexander leaning against it in dark jeans and a gray sweater that matched his eyes perfectly. He looked up as she emerged, and that devastating smile spread across his face. You came, Emma said, still half disbelieving. I said I would, Alexander replied, opening the passenger door for her. You look beautiful. Emma glanced down at her simple jeans and blue sweater, the nicest casual clothes she owned. I look like I work in a restaurant. You look like Emma, Alexander said, and somehow that felt like the greatest compliment she had ever received. As they drove through the city, Emma couldn't help but notice that Alexander seemed to know every street, every shortcut, every dark alley. When they stopped at red lights, his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings with the alertness of someone always expecting danger. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere we can talk without interruption. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a beautiful townhouse in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods. Alexander parked in the private garage and led Emma through a side entrance into the most magnificent kitchen she had ever seen. This is your house? Emma breathed, taking in the marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. One of them, Alexander said casually, then caught her expression. I'm sorry. I don't mean to sound arrogant, I'm not used to thinking about how that sounds to other people. Emma wandered around the kitchen, running her fingers over surfaces that probably cost more than she made in a month. How many houses do you have? A few, Alexander said evasively. Are you hungry? I thought I'd cook for you. You cook? Emma asked, surprised. Alexander's smile was self-deprecating. My mother insisted I learn before she died. Said no man should depend on others for basic survival skills. There was pain in his voice when he mentioned his mother, and Emma felt her heart soften. What are you making? Ossobuco. It was her favorite. Emma watched in fascination as Alexander moved around the kitchen with surprising skill, browning meat and chopping vegetables with expert precision. She had expected him to be helpless in a domestic setting, but he moved with the same confidence and control he displayed everywhere else. Can I help? She offered. Just to keep me company, Alexander said, pouring 2 glasses of wine. Tell me about yourself, your family, your dreams, what you want out of life. Emma accepted the wine, probably worth more than her monthly grocery budget, and settled onto a bar stool. There's not much to tell. I grew up in Chinatown with my mother. My father died when I was 12. I put myself through nursing school, but jobs are competitive, so I'm working at the restaurant while I wait for something to open up at one of the hospitals. What about your mother? Emma's face clouded. She's been sick for the past 2 years. Cancer. The treatments are expensive, even with insurance, so I send her money every month. Alexander paused in his stirring. Is she getting good care? The best we can afford, Emma said quietly. Alexander made a mental note to look into Emma's mother's situation. Money could solve that problem easily, though he would have to be careful about how he offered help without offending Emma's pride. What about you? Emma asked. Tell me about your family business. Alexander's hands stilled completely. This was the moment he had been dreading. How could he explain that his family business involved loan sharking, illegal gambling, and money laundering without sending her running for the door? It's complicated, he said finally. You keep saying that, Emma observed. Are you ashamed of what you do? The question hit Alexander like a physical blow. Was he ashamed? He had been raised to believe that everything the family did was necessary, that they were providing services and protection that the government couldn't or wouldn't provide. But looking at Emma's innocent face, he felt the weight of his choices in a way he never had before. Sometimes, he admitted quietly. Emma set down her wine glass and moved around the kitchen island until she was standing directly in front of him. Alexander, what do you do for a living? He looked down at her upturned face, so trusting and open, and made a decision that would change both their lives forever. My family controls most of the organized crime on the East Coast, he said simply. We're what people would call the Mafia. Emma blinked once, twice. I'm sorry, what? My father is the head of the Rossi crime family, Alexander continued, his voice steady despite the terror he felt at her potential reaction. When he retires or dies, I'll take over. The businesses you've heard of, the restaurants, the construction companies, the shipping operations, they're all fronts for money laundering. We also run illegal gambling, loan sharking, and we provide protection services. Emma stared at him for a long moment, processing this information. Protection services? If someone threatens one of our clients, we make the problem go away. By killing people? Alexander's jaw tightened. Sometimes. Have you ever... Emma's voice trailed off. Killed someone? Alexander finished. Yes. Emma took a step back, her face pale. Alexander felt his heart breaking as he watched her retreat from him. Why are you telling me this? She whispered. Because I'm falling in love with you, Alexander said simply. And I won't build a relationship on lies. Emma's eyes widened. You're falling in love with me? We barely know each other. I know that you're kind to strangers even when they don't deserve it, Alexander said, moving closer despite her obvious fear. I know that you work 2 jobs to take care of your sick mother. I know that you kissed me because you felt something real, not because you wanted something from me. I know that you're honest and brave and beautiful, and that I've never met anyone like you in my entire life. You're a criminal, Emma said, but there was less conviction in her voice than before. Yes, Alexander agreed. I am. But I'm also a man who would do anything to protect you, who would kill or die for you, who wants to spend every day for the rest of his life making you happy. Emma felt tears streaming down her cheeks. This is crazy. People like you don't fall in love with people like me. What are people like me? Dangerous, powerful, rich, sophisticated. And what are people like you? Nobody special, Emma whispered. Alexander closed the distance between them in 2 strides, cupping her face in his hands. You're everything special. You're the most special person I've ever met. Before Emma could protest, he was kissing her again, and just like before, her rational mind shut off completely. She melted into his arms, her hands fisting in his sweater as she kissed him back with all the longing and confusion and fear she felt. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I should go," Emma said shakily. "Stay," Alexander pleaded. "Have dinner with me. Let me show you that I'm more than just the worst parts of what I do." Emma looked up into his storm-gray eyes and saw vulnerability there that she suspected few people ever witnessed. This powerful, dangerous man was afraid she would leave him. "Okay," she said softly, "but I have questions. Ask me anything." Over dinner, which was absolutely delicious, Emma grilled Alexander about his life, his family, his business. He answered every question honestly, no matter how damaging the truth might be. He told her about growing up knowing he would inherit a criminal empire, about the first time he killed someone to protect his younger sister, about the loneliness of never being able to trust anyone's motives. "Don't you want to leave?" Emma asked. "Start over somewhere else?" Alexander shook his head. "It doesn't work that way. This isn't a job you quit. It's a family, a blood oath. The only way out is death. That's horrible." "It's all I've ever known," Alexander said simply. "Until I met you." "What's different now?" Alexander reached across the table and took her hand. "Now I have something worth protecting that has nothing to do with the family business. Now I have a reason to want to be better." Emma felt her resistance crumbling. She should be terrified of this man, should be running as fast as she could in the opposite direction. Instead, she found herself wanting to comfort him, to ease the pain she saw in his eyes when he talked about his life. "Alexander," she said carefully, "I need you to understand something. I'm not brave or sophisticated or exciting. I'm just a regular girl who works hard and worries about money, and has never done anything more dangerous than jaywalk. I don't know how to be with someone like you." "You don't have to be anyone but yourself," Alexander said, bringing her hand to his lips. "That's all I want. And what happens when your family finds out about me? When your enemies try to use me to hurt you? I've seen enough movies to know how this goes." Alexander's expression darkened. "No one will hurt you. I won't let them. You can't control everything. Watch me." The fierce protectiveness in his voice should have frightened Emma, but instead it made her feel safer than she had ever felt in her life. They talked until nearly midnight, and when Alexander finally drove Emma home to her tiny studio apartment, she invited him up for coffee. "Are you sure?" Alexander asked, studying her face carefully. "I'm not sure about anything," Emma admitted, "but I don't want tonight to end." Alexander's apartment building probably had more square footage than Emma's entire building, but he didn't seem to notice or judge her modest living situation. Instead, he looked at her bookshelves, her small collection of art, the photos of her and her mother. "You made this place a home," he said softly. "It's not much." "It's perfect," Alexander said, and he meant it. Everything about Emma's life was authentic and warm, so different from the cold luxury he was accustomed to. Emma made coffee with shaking hands, hyper-aware of Alexander's presence in her small space. When she turned to hand him his mug, she found him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "What?" she whispered. "I'm trying to memorize this," Alexander said. "You here, looking at me like I'm not a monster." "You're not a monster," Emma said firmly. "You've done monstrous things, but that's not who you are. Not with me." Alexander set down his coffee mug and pulled Emma into his arms. "I love you," he said against her hair. "I know it's too soon and too complicated and too dangerous, but I love you." Emma pulled back to look at his face, searching for any sign of deception or manipulation. But there was nothing but raw honesty in his gray eyes. "I love you too," she whispered, surprising herself with the admission. Alexander's kiss this time was different, deeper, more desperate, full of promises and demands. Emma felt herself being swept away by the intensity of her feelings for this complicated, dangerous, wonderful man. "Stay," she breathed against his lips. "Emma," Alexander said roughly, "if I stay tonight, I'm never letting you go." "Then stay." 2 months later, Emma was living in Alexander's townhouse, her meager possessions looking lost in the elegant rooms. Alexander had insisted on paying off all her mother's medical bills and arranging for her to receive treatment from the best oncologists in the city. He had also quietly arranged for Emma to get a nursing position at the city's most prestigious hospital, though Emma never learned of his involvement. It should have been perfect, but Emma was struggling to find her place in Alexander's dangerous world. She had met his sister Sophia, a brilliant lawyer who helped manage the family's legitimate businesses, and who had welcomed Emma with surprising warmth. But she had also attended family gatherings where conversations stopped when she entered the room, where men with cold eyes assessed her like a potential threat. "They think I'm a liability," Emma said one evening after a particularly tense dinner at the Rossi family compound. "They think you're a weakness," Alexander corrected, pulling Emma onto his lap as they sat in his study. "Something that could be used against me. Aren't I?" Alexander's arms tightened around her. "Yes. But you're also my strength. You make me want to be better than I am." "Alexander," Emma began hesitantly, "what would happen if you walked away from all this? Really walked away?" Alexander was quiet for so long that Emma thought he wasn't going to answer. "They would never stop looking for me," he said finally. "I know too much about too many operations. And even if they let me live, they would never let me take you with me. You would be seen as a loose end." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. "So we're trapped." "I'm trapped," Alexander corrected. "You could still leave. I could arrange for you to disappear, start over somewhere safe." "Without you?" "Without me." Emma turned in his arms until she was straddling his lap, looking directly into his eyes. "Is that what you want?" "I want you safe." "That's not what I asked." Alexander cupped her face in his hands. "I want you with me forever. I want to marry you and give you children and grow old with you. But I also know that staying with me means accepting a life where you'll always be in danger." "Then we'll face the danger together," Emma said firmly. "Emma?" "No," she interrupted. "I've made my choice. I love you, Alexander Rossi. All of you, even the parts that scare me. I'm not going anywhere." Alexander felt something tight in his chest loosen for the first time in years. "Marry me," he said urgently. "What?" "Marry me," Alexander repeated, lifting Emma and setting her on the desk so he could drop to one knee in front of her. "I don't have a ring yet, but I'll buy you the biggest diamond in the city. Marry me, Emma. Be my wife, my partner, my everything." Emma felt tears streaming down her face as she looked down at this powerful, dangerous man kneeling before her, like she was the one with all the power. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Alexander stood and kissed her with such passion that Emma felt like she might faint. When they broke apart, both were crying. "I'll protect you," Alexander promised against her lips. "Whatever comes, I'll keep you safe." "I know," Emma said, and she meant it. She had seen what Alexander Rossi was capable of when someone threatened what he cared about. She had also seen his gentleness, his vulnerability, the way he held her like she was made of spun glass. Their wedding 3 months later was a small, private ceremony with only immediate family present. Emma wore a simple white dress that cost more than her old apartment's yearly rent, and Alexander looked devastatingly handsome in a black tuxedo. As they exchanged vows in the garden of the family compound, surrounded by armed guards disguised as wedding guests, Emma reflected on how drastically her life had changed. A year ago, she had been a lonely waitress, struggling to make ends meet. Now she was marrying into one of the most powerful crime families in the country. It should have been terrifying. Instead, as Alexander slipped a platinum band onto her finger and promised to love and protect her for the rest of his life, Emma felt like the luckiest woman in the world. "You may kiss the bride," the priest announced. Alexander cupped Emma's face in his hands and kissed her softly, tenderly, like she was the most precious thing in his world. "I love you, Mrs. Rossi," he whispered against her lips. "I love you too," Emma whispered back. As their family and friends erupted in cheers around them, Emma realized that sometimes the most unexpected love stories were also the most powerful. She had accidentally kissed a stranger at a charity gala, not knowing he was a dangerous mafia boss. That impulsive moment had changed both their lives forever. Now, as Alexander's wife and partner, Emma was ready to face whatever challenges their complicated world might bring. As long as they faced them together, she knew they could survive anything. "Ready for our honeymoon, Mrs. Rossi?" Alexander asked, offering her his arm. "Ready for everything," Emma replied, taking his arm and stepping forward into their new life together. The fairy tale was just beginning,